Hi, I'm Marie Elizabeth, and this is Relationship Alchemy. Today, we're talking about navigating co-working with your spouse with Cierra Lueck. Cierra has helped over 300 businesses build their audiences and groups on Facebook, resulting in consistent and predictable 5 to 7 figure months with smaller audiences of highly qualified leads. She's the author of Not a Sales Book and is the wife of 19 years to an Army veteran and a mother of 5 kids, including one who's a brain tumor survivor. Welcome to the show today, Cierra.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you. Relationship podcast. I've never been on one before. This is my very first.
Oh, well, thank you for choosing this one. And I was excited to talk with you because of the relationship you've cultivated with your spouse. And we've chatted about, some of this co-working stuff before. And I think it'd be really useful to my audience because how do you navigate co-working with your spouse? It can be fraught, especially when there's a lot of other stuff going on in life. And it can be fraught, but also challenging to separate what's work, what's life. How do you do all that? So I'm excited to dive in on that today. How does it start? Where do you two begin in this endeavor?
So my husband and I, we got married 19 years ago. We recently celebrated our 19-year wedding anniversary. So 20 years is coming up in 2024. And when we first got married, we both had talked about how we had entrepreneurial endeavors as kids, and we both wanted to have our own business at some point. And so we actually started off our relationship with trying to do entrepreneurial endeavors. And so our very first company that we kind of built together was a construction company. My husband was very good at some of the work. And so he knew how to do a lot of the working side. And I was very good at the marketing side and also at like the business operations side. And so it's funny too, because now he is my operations director because he's more of an integrator and I'm more of a visionary. And so not that he's not visionary and not that I'm not integrator, but it's just more of what I lean into and love with all the creativity side of it. And then he more leans into and loves all the structure and the systems and the achievement-based things. And I'm more like, ooh, this is a fun idea. So we started with a construction company and that we had for about 10 years before he joined the Army. When he joined the Army, we put everything on hold. And honestly, I was really scared to do a lot of stuff on my own. So I just tried to do like these little side hustles. Like I tried making quilts at one point. I tried doing wreaths at another point, like creating wreaths and selling those. I also did a few network marketing things. And like I did like all these little side hustles and anything that I could do from home. I also I made like cookie cakes and like just all the little crafty stuff that a lot of stay-at-home moms typically do. I was doing all of that while he was in the military. And then it was around the time that my son, who is the brain tumor survivor, when we found out he had a brain tumor. So he was 11 at the time. He is now 15. When he was 11 and he was going through all of those really difficult things, because the way that we found out, he was actually cooking in the kitchen. He had what's called a focal seizure, which is a seizure where you can't even tell that the person's having a seizure because it looks like they're still doing things, but they're spacey and they're not responding to you. Wow. So he was in the kitchen cooking at the time that he got spacey and non-responsive, and his body was still moving around like he was doing things. And so he picked up a hot pan with his bare hands and he got 2nd and 3rd degree burns on his fingers and palms. So he ended up needing 4 skin graft surgeries. We were in and out of hospitals and rehab and all of this, like more than sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, but at least weekly for months. And it was during that time that like he ended up like he lost all of his friends. He couldn't go outside and play sports anymore, which he loved. He couldn't like feed himself. He couldn't hold a remote for the TV. He couldn't play on the computer anymore. He couldn't even do video games or anything like that. Everyone had to do things for him, couldn't bathe himself. And as like a young man stepping into double digits, I had to help him go to the bathroom because he couldn't pull down his own pants. And so it was like one of those really defeating times in his life that he started struggling with depression, and he started having like maybe like ideas of like, well, maybe it would be better off if I was dead kind of thoughts, which is really hard to hear as a mom because you're always trying to make sure your family is well kept and happy. And it was during that time that when he said that, I realized I couldn't let my son die. And so I started like coming out, and every single day I was just that motivational speaker because I was feeling depressed too, because our entire life got flipped upside down. And so, and I had been trying to do side hustle stuff still at that point. And so I was coming out and being that motivational speaker, going back into my closet and crying, and coming out and being the most motivational speaker again. And that was just my daily life at that point. And there was this one day that I came out. We had been watching The Last Dance, the one with Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Yeah.
Yeah. We were watching that, and I recognized that my kids were seeing Michael Jordan as like this guy who's up on a pedestal. And they were seeing people like, I think at the time they really liked Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande, and they were just getting into Mr. Beast and like all of these other people who have done great and amazing things. And they're thinking that these people are up on a pedestal and they had this different life than I did. And what they were seeing was like third-hand success. And I recognized in that moment that I came out. This is what I said to my son. I said, you can do and be whatever you want in life as long as you pursue it with all your might. And then it hit me that I wasn't showing him that firsthand. And I had to show him that firsthand. And that's when I decided, like, I have to start pursuing my own business. Now, I immediately started diving into all the assets that I already currently had, which wasn't very much. I had like a few DIY courses. One of them was like a 2K course, which was the most money I'd ever spent at the time. Now I've spent more than 200,000. So like it's a lot in the last 3 years.
Perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. I've made over 600,000. So just like for anyone to know, I've invested 200,000, but I've made over 600,000 because of those investments. And some of those were not investments that led to the money, but they were investments that showed me what not to invest in the future. But anyways, that being said,
we've all made those.
When I said that to my son and I started pursuing stuff, I was not immediately successful. I didn't get my first clients right away. It was several months before I actually jumped into another mastermind that had a course. And that one was way more money than I'd ever spent. And it was $10K for my very first mastermind. And in that one, I didn't even get my first client until like a week before my time was up. But when I got that first client, I remember being just so stupid excited about the $1,900. And it was funny because before I jumped into the mastermind, I had just gotten my credit cleaned up. I'd just gotten approved for like this 20K credit card, which was like, I just felt like I was like the richest person on earth at the time. It's so funny looking back. And so I had the amount of money to pay in full, which was really cool because I feel like people who pay in full get better results than people who do payment plans. Yes. It's just something that happens inside of their mind. They're like, well, I invested, I have to go all in. And so that being said, I paid in full. And when I had the conversation with my husband, he said, am I going to have to make the payments on this? And that was something that hit me in kind of a funky way because I was like, no, like I'm going to be successful with this and like, I'm going to do it. And it's like, I didn't realize that was a motivator for me, but it really was because I was worried, like, is he going to have to make the payments on this? And I told him, I was like, if I could make enough money to just make the payments on this, it would be worth it. And so he said yes. And we made that big buy-in decision together. And that was like the first, like, us moving together again towards like business goals and the first decision that we made. And then from there, it was my business. And if my husband hadn't been in the military full time at the time, I would have waited on him and let him be the leader. And it was because he was so busy that I actually had to step up as a leader in that situation, which was really cool for me because I don't think I ever would have done it otherwise.
That's
and so that was like
story.
The beginning.
Yeah, that's and I love that you wove in everything going on with your kid and I imagine your other kids too, like just everybody responding to the enormity of the situation and then realizing, like you said, you had to demonstrate the leadership you were wanting your son to be able to access within himself, right? That's so powerful. And you know, I'm chuckling a little because that moment where your husband's like, am I going to have to make the payments? You know, that could have gone so many ways. And it's so great that you recognized, oh, that's a motivator. I can use that.
After the fact.
Yeah. Yeah. In hindsight.
After the fact, not when it happened. Now in the moment, I was a little hurt. But I was just like, I was also trying my case to a judge, sort of speak, you know, because it's like this huge investment. And it's like, if something happens, it would be on like our family's budget to cover that. And so that was one of those conversations, like $10,000 is not a small chunk of change for most people.
Right.
You know, that's a big investment for most people. And so it was a bit of a conversation.
So how did you come full circle? So I hear a couple of things in what you've described so far. The flip, where in the beginning you were focused in one area of the business and he was, your earlier business before the military, and then how now you flipped and he's more the operations and you're more the visionary. Was that a trial and error kind of figuring out your genius zones kind of situation, or how did you come to that?
Well, in the military, he went to school he started out as a Black Hawk mechanic, and he was on the, what do they call it? My brain is blanking. It's coming to me. It's coming to me now. He started out as a regular soldier, and then he transitioned to the officer side of the house. And the way that he was able to do that is he jumped into the green to gold program. He was actually too old and he had too big of a family to be able to qualify. So he had to get waivers for those, and he got the waivers and he got approved. And they only approve like 200 people per year into the green to gold program. And so he got approved for it. Not only did he get approved for it, it was also like in my hometown near my family, which was amazing. And it was at the original college that he was at when I met him. And so he hadn't gotten a degree yet, and they paid for him to get a degree in leadership. And a degree in leadership, it's like, actually, if you understand the way that degree paths work, a lot of people don't know that degree exists, or they didn't several years ago when he got it. But it's essentially like, if you understand like business degree and marketing degree and like business management, leadership is higher than that. So a leadership degree is higher than that, because we're looking at like all of the organizational leadership. It's something that a COO would need. It's something that an HR director would need. And that's actually what he did for the military for a time, was he was the HR director. And so human resources, he's actually working on staffing, putting the people in the right positions at the right time so that the teams will work better together. And he did all of that. He like staffed, I think, over 500 to 1,000 different people in any given time period while he was doing the HR director position for the military. So he actually stepped into that role for the military and was executing it very well, was like the best leader, to where people were fighting over having him on their team, to where his team members called him up months after he was no longer a part of their system and were like, I miss you as my leader, sir.
Wow.
And so he just like, he was doing it already and he was really good at it. And one of the very first things that I noticed he was really good at was spreadsheets, and I hate spreadsheets. And so he builds out all of these like really cool, intricate codes inside of the spreadsheets and makes them function really well. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And so I'm like, hey, babe, can you build a spreadsheet for me? And that was where it started initially, was build a spreadsheet for me. And then I'll give you a portion of the profits from my business this month. And then it just kind of grew from there, to where he started talking about, well, if you're going to do stuff for like staffing and for who you need to hire next, and the organization chart for your company and stuff like that. And he started walking me through like, what are those pieces that I need to get to that higher level business?
Oh, it sounds like it evolved organically in a certain way. Like you recognized, oh, this is a gift and this is something I don't want to do. That he likes to do. Yeah, it was kind of like a little, like I got my toe in the door and then my whole foot. And then I was like, hey, what's up? I just kind of like snuck in there, and it's like, hello, like you could possibly do more for me. And then now he's actually, sometimes he jumps in and helps me with like the sales side and the marketing side too, just to do outreach on whenever I want to do like a push. So right now we're doing a push in our sales department. And so he's jumping into the weeds and diving in with me, and he just helps. Like, I mean, I'm sure, being a woman, it's like we have those energy cycles, whether we get everything removed and we stop it or not, those energy cycles still exist. And we have those really, really high highs, and then we have those really, really low lows. And so when I just go through different energy cycles, like he is extremely supportive, and he knows what kind of support I need, which is really nice. Like after 19 years of being together, he's learned a little bit about me. That's amazing. Can you say a bit about the different kinds of support, like some examples of different ways that he supports at different points in the cycle? Because I think that would be really helpful for people to hear, maybe give people some ideas of things they could ask for.
So one of the first things that I would recommend that anyone in a relationship does, period, whether you're working together or not, is to take the Myers-Briggs and understand what your 4 letters are, because that part was a huge help for us. So he understands that part of me. And there's actually an article that's been around for more than a decade that I still send to people because it's so helpful. It says how each Myers-Briggs type reacts to stress, I think is the title of it. And it's from Psychology Junkie. And anyways, on that one, she goes over the stressors and then what it looks like when you're at your absolute like bottom of the barrel stress. And then it dives into like what helps them de-stress. And so one of the things that my husband learned about me is that for me, I really like sometimes to just be listened to and not given a solution. I'm sure some people have seen like It's Not About the Nail video. If you haven't, you should look it up. It's hilarious.
That's a great video. Yeah.
For me, that's how it is for me. I really don't always want solutions. Sometimes I do. And he is because he is ENTJ, I'm ENFJ. And so he is very like, he wants to give a solution for everything. That is his strong point. That helps him de-stress. And when he can't give a solution, it actually stresses him out.
Right.
And so he's very aware of sometimes like just listening and not responding to me at all and just listening so that I can just get those ideas out. And then other times I'll tell him like, I actually want a sounding board and I want to work through some of these ideas with somebody. So almost like how in Think and Grow Rich, they talk about the third mind effect, where when you get 2 minds together and it essentially you bring up one idea and another idea, and then these new ideas start to form. And that's that third mind. So he'll do that with me too, where we literally will like, so for me, I like some spontaneity and some fun in my everyday life. And so we'll go down to, there's a place out here called The Factory. And it's just like these little cute shops inside. There's an atrium area that has a bar. There's also a coffee shop. And so sometimes we'll go down to The Factory, we'll get a cup of coffee, which is fun for me. It's exciting for me. And then we'll sit down, and just being in that fun, like date-like environment allows me to be more creative. And so he'll open up that space for me. And actually we were doing something like that yesterday. And, I recognize that one of the elements that we missed yesterday was we didn't buy the coffee. And so not buying the coffee or there's also a bar. So sometimes we'll get like a drink and I'll get a little tipsy and then we'll do business ideas.
Yes.
And so we didn't do that part yesterday. So yesterday I kind of fell into this like downward spiral of energy, and he recognized that I just needed to be listened to. And so he just sat and opened up space for me to be listened to, which was really cool. And and that was enough to put me back into that space this morning. And it's like, there's some things that he can add to me, and there's some things that I can add to him. And so once we recognize like, what are the things that we really want from each other or need from each other on a regular basis? And I say need in the most non-codependent way possible.
Totally. Yeah. It's okay to actually need things, people.
Yeah.
I feel like we've grown up in this culture that's made it, wrong to recognize that we have needs, but we do. Anyway,
absolutely.
Proceed.
So for example, sometimes after being together for 19 years, sometimes he falls into where he gets really stressed out. And physical touch is one of my favorite things for love language. And so sometimes he forgets to tell me that I look really hot today because like I did my makeup and I did my hair and I look amazing. And I just need somebody to be like, girl, you look fire today, so that I can jump in there and be like, yeah, and I'm going to make so many sales, or whatever.
Right.
Like I just need somebody to tell me that I look amazing, or like, ooh, you're so sexy. And so sometimes when he's in his highest stress moments, he forgets to do that. And it's my responsibility to go tell him, hey, can you just tell me I look sexy right now? And it feels really silly because you don't want to have to ask, but it's like, they you have to respect that they're human too. And so that's one of those things that like, sometimes that is the support that he gives me, is just telling me that I look amazing today, or coming into my office. Like the last 2 days, he's been bringing me breakfast into my office because he knows I'm skipping eating.
Mm,
And so it's amazing that he does that. And then some
yeah.
days, like I forget to get a cup of coffee or something like that. And I actually reach out to my son, who's 15 now, and I'll
Mm,
ask him, hey, can you make me coffee and bring it into me? And he says yes and brings it. And so it's
wow.
just like
Yeah.
sometimes the support we
I
need is
want to
support we ask
highlight,
for.
that's it. And I want to highlight this point because you brought up a really important point, which is that as women, we kind of wish they would just know what to do, whether or not we're with a man or a woman, whatever. We just wish our spouse would automatically know without us having to ask. And that's just a recipe for disaster, I think. It's so much more
The way
effective.
the way that that develops is by asking enough to where they get in the habit, because then they
Right,
pick up on the patterns. But if you don't
right,
ask enough or communicate enough, they'll never know.
right. And if you
And
have
I
a
mean,
particular
it's the
way you
same.
like your coffee,
I think
actually
that
teach him that.
that happened in our bedroom too, you know,
Mm-hmm. Amen.
and our sex life is that we've always been extremely communicative. So
Yep.
we've always communicated. Like after we're finished, it's like, I really liked it when you did X. You know,
Yep.
like if you did that more in the future, I would not mind.
I
You
would
know,
be a
stuff like that.
yes. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think the communication piece is so huge. And I want to go back to something
Mm.
you said earlier about, because I want to sort of break it down as an exercise that a listener could do, which is knowing what kind of support is needed in any given moment. And a very easy way to teach that, because again, our partners don't always know automatically when to listen and when to offer a solution. So a very easy way to do that or to train that is either you as the speaker say, hey, I just need you to listen right now. Or, hey, just like you said, I need a sounding board. The opposite is also really powerful. Like Patrick does this with me a lot. Like I'll start talking about something, and before I get too far down the road, he sometimes, because if he's not clear, which I need, he'll stop me and he'll say, hey, just so I know how to tune my listening, what do you need right now? Do you need me to just listen, or do you need a solution? Do you want me to start thinking of solutions? So that preemptively, before we get 5 miles down the road and I'm frustrated because he's doing the wrong thing, he just asks up front. Or if I remember to tell him up front, I tell him up front. So that's something you could do as a listener, to just start tuning that in your own relationship, to really recognize sometimes I need this and sometimes I need that. And it's on me to either ask for it, or I can ask my partner to do what Patrick does, which is, hey, before we get too far down the road, please ask me which I need right now, so that we are going in the direction that's going to be really good for both of us.
And my husband does that too. And I didn't even think to bring that up or recognize that. So I'm so glad that you brought that up, because he literally did that yesterday after he was like, hey, are you ready to get started? And I was like, yep. And then he's like, okay, well, cool. Like, what would you like to do? And I was like, just give me a minute. And then eventually, like, I started like sharing things. And he's like, okay, just so that I'm really clear, like, what is it that you want out of this conversation right now? And so, he does that too. So that's such a great exercise that
It
anyone can
really is.
implement. And it's honestly, it's really hard in the beginning because you're very afraid of what your spouse is going to think or how they're going to react or respond. And just to encourage and build up on the exercise and encourage you guys to actually take action on what Marie Elizabeth was talking about. I want to let you know that when you are worried about your spouse and the way they respond, what's the worst that could happen? Is it just continues to be like it is right now, which isn't what you want. And so
Exactly.
the best that could happen would be that they're like, oh my gosh, like, yes, I'll do that for you. And then it gets better and better over time.
That's so beautifully said. And the key to it getting better and better over time is this kind of transparent communication, like we're talking about. And the other thing I heard in everything you've described about how the two of you work together is, and tell me if this is accurate, what I'm hearing is you, whether or not it's explicitly stated, it feels to me like there's an awareness that you're on the same team, which people don't always, like, I didn't grow up with the innate knowledge that you're on the same team with your spouse. Like, it's not necessarily what was demonstrated to me. And so for me, Patrick sometimes even has to remind me if I'm getting stressed out. He'll be like, hey, we're on the same team here, you know? And it feels to me like the two of you have evolved a co-working team and a parenting team and a sex team and a life team, you know, that works well together.
I could say, like, I don't think I ever would have said it like that, but I do appreciate that perspective. I think when I first jumped into my business, I started hiring mindset coaches right away because that's what my first mentor said. He said, at any given time, I always have a mindset coach, a business coach, and a fitness coach, like, or a health coach of some sort. And so I was like, okay, that's what I need to do too, so that I can be successful like him. Just like, because I was modeling, like Brian Tracy said, just find the person who has what you want and just model exactly what they did. And I was like, cool, so I'm going to model that too. I'm just always going to have a mindset coach. And I always have somebody that I'm working with on mindset. And I've had like 6 different mindset coaches now. And so that being said, because of that, my husband didn't have a mindset coach. And he'd never had one before. And so I started having a ton of personal growth in the beginning that he did not have. And I recognized that I was growing in my patience, and I was growing in my communication, and I was growing in my ability to assess situations and make better decisions on how I react. I was less reactive and more proactive in the way that I was communicating. And that was something that at that point in the beginning of my business that he didn't have it yet. And he hadn't grown in that area yet. And so, you know, he was going to the military and he was getting like griped at all day and then coming home and like he was gone for like 12 hours a day working and having a crap day and then coming home with all of that energy from the day. And like we got what was left of him essentially. And so it was really difficult for him. And it was during that time, about 6 months in to me building my business, that he actually came to me and I said, I'd actually lost a business partner. And I was really sad because she just like at some point just stopped being my friend. And it really hurt me. It was a really difficult time. And I had so much growth and learning out of that experience. And I still I love her to this day. But for whatever reason, she left. And in that moment, I looked at my husband. This was my second business partnership that just kind of went sideways and didn't work out. And I told him, I was like, am I just a bad business partner? Am I just never going to have anyone that's that works well with me and stuff like that? Did I do something wrong? Is it me? And he was like, just give me time to catch up. And that was the first time that he recognized something that I think we both recognized, but we didn't want to say. And it was just it was painful to have that affirmation of what I was feeling, but it was also very relieving and rejuvenating that he recognized it too. And that he was trying to make strides to get there with me and to be growing with me, and that it was important to him. That's huge. I think that, again, it was just there's been a lot of times over the years where, things get really tough, where you don't want to have to admit that you made a really bad financial decision and you shouldn't have started ads too early or, or that you jumped into a mastermind and then you got in on the inside and the training wasn't what they promised or something like that. There's several different things you don't want to have to admit that you made a really big mistake. And it's the thing is that if you can't trust your spouse with that, the relationship probably won't last anyway if you don't learn to trust them with it, because it does take learning, and you have to they're going to find out eventually anyway. And my husband always says, bad news does not get better with time.
That's a great phrase. So true.
Yes.
I want to really highlight the sort of the cruxy piece in there of God, it just flew out of my mind, but it jumped out at me when you said it. Yes, the piece of trusting the truth being both painful and relieving. And I think we spend a lot of time in our relationships till we trust our partners fully to be able to be in a space of truth together, we spend a lot of time kind of pussyfooting or padding the truth or even avoiding it, thinking that that's somehow going to make things better. And in my experience, it's exactly what you said. Truth is painful, but it provides a solid baseline to create change. If you're not dealing in the truth, you don't really have a relationship, it's like it's based on lies. So that combination of being willing to go through the discomfort of hitting the truth and actually saying it out loud, to then having it be relieving, because now it's out in the open, you can do something about it. You're clear about what you can do next. I think that part is so key. And it takes a lot of courage. Like you both had a lot of courage in that spot.
Yeah. And my husband, because he was in the military, this is kind of a more sensitive topic, but he's had to work through PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And that has actually been a really difficult thing to navigate, which we didn't have that when we were building our construction business in the beginning of our marriage. We didn't have that. Yeah. It wasn't until he joined the military, middle of our marriage, because we were already like more than 10 years, more than a decade into being married. We already had 3 kids at the time that he jumped in. And then we had 2 kids after he joined. And one of those, a month after she was born, or 3 weeks after she was born, he deployed to Afghanistan.
Oh, Lord.
And then with our 4th child, he was supposed to be born on June 17th. And this beautiful giant baby of mine decided to come at 42 weeks and 2 days, the day before our anniversary. So we just celebrated his birthday on his 6th birthday on July 3rd. And he was born really, really late. And so my husband had slated for his training to not be in June, but be in July, because he was due in June. And then he came in July instead. And so my husband actually had to leave for training 3 days after he was born. And so, I mean, like, just little things like that, where we didn't have the option but to like, this is life, and there's going to be, this is one thing that I learned that has helped me immensely in like the co-working with my spouse and being in this relationship. This is one thing that I learned from actually the network marketing world. I kept having issues where I would see all these people succeeding. Just on a side note, if anyone's trying to do network marketing, you need to learn sales and marketing. And if you do not go out and learn 100%. Sales and marketing external to the network marketing, you are not going to succeed like your mentors. You're just not. So you have to go learn that. But other than that, one of the other things I recognized is that I had a case of what I call a case of the Mondays, where I would be like, okay, I'm going to start on Monday, like kind of like people do with a new diet or an exercise program. I'll start on Monday, but then Monday comes and it's like, oh, I'm sick this Monday. So I'll start next Monday. And they want to start like at the beginning of a cycle or something like that. And sometimes we have to start in the hard cycles. And what I started recognizing in network marketing was there was always a Monday. There was always something that happened, whether somebody was sick or somebody was dying or I was sick or one of my kids had something come up with, like a friendship or a relationship, or a pet got ill or died or something like that. Or one of my friends had something happening. There was always something happening. And at some point I just had to decide, am I going to keep letting the happenings stop me from pursuing the things that I want most? And so that was a really big thing that I think changed my relationship, is that, like, I know my husband is going to have down moments, or he's going to be away for training, or he's going to have something happen, or one of my kids is going to have something happen. And is that going to stop me from doing the things that are necessary? Like, when do we give up our, like, brushing our teeth because, our pet died or a family member died or we're going to a funeral? Like, we don't give up brushing our teeth because that's a normal part of life. Why isn't building our business or pursuing our dreams a normal part of life too? It should be. And so that was one of those things that, as long as you realize there's always going to be something, and then you put in systems that are minimal systems to support you. The reason we don't forget to brush our teeth is because we have all of the environment and everything that we need to support us. And so the same thing in our relationship. Do you have the environment in place that actually supports the vision that you want?
Yes. Beautifully said. That is so, and it also builds, I hear so much mental strength in what you just shared. Like, it's not about suppressing or not acknowledging what we're feeling if we're up or we're down or whatever is happening that particular Monday, so to speak, but really that power of choice. Am I going to let this thing stop me from reaching out to those 5 people or calling that person or whatever it is that's on my plate for today?
Asking for help.
Asking for help.
Am I going to
right?
let this fear or this other thing that's
Yeah.
popped up? It's like, oh, I'll ask for it later. Like sometimes we don't want to ask our spouse for that. Like I like physical touch. So sometimes I don't want to ask for my love language when he's had a really bad day. Why?
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
what if he has a bad day every day? Are you just not going to get that love anymore?
Right. Exactly.
And so, yeah, asking for support.
People are free to say yes or no. You know, it's like asking allows the people in our life to be adults.
One of my
because they can say yes or no.
One of my coaches, I'm so glad you brought that up. One of my coaches had told me, like, if I don't ask, then I'm choosing no for him.
Correct.
And I'm taking that decision away from him. And the masculine energy loves to make decisions and loves to be able to step in and sometimes be that superhero or be that, person who takes care of the family. And women have that energy of wanting to be the nurturer. And so if we don't ask for that support, it's like we're making the decision for those people, kind of like the same way that they say in sales, like if you don't ask for the sale, then you're making the decision for them.
Yep.
And unless there's somebody you don't want to work with, how rude.
Exactly. And in your relationship, how rude. Because then the flip side, what often happens is we spiral into resentment and I'm doing everything and nobody helps me. And, I'm holding it all. And we don't always recognize how much we're the ones setting up that dynamic by not asking,
That's so
This,
good.
I've so loved this conversation. It's so juicy and useful. So is there anything you would like to leave folks with down? Let me just let y'all know, down in the show notes, there's Cierra's full bio, which is amazing. I read the short version at the top of the show. There's the links for how to find her work, find her on social media. Also a beautiful free gift, a mindset related gift. You can hear in everything she says how solid her mindset is. So it's really worth going down into those show notes and getting that gift. And so all of that said, what is there a final thought you'd like to leave folks with before we wrap?
Okay, cool. Let's fucking go. That's what LFG means. But as a final thought, I would like to say that if you're ever in a moment of darkness, there's a couple core things that I would say to do. First off, recognize that the darkest storms are always followed by the brightest rainbows, and you might not be able to see what good is coming out of this, but I promise you there is always good on the other side. And you will know this because you will look back in your memory and you will remember where you felt like you were at your darkest before. Right now, a different time, you'll remember when you felt like you were at your darkest, and then suddenly good things happened on the other side. You'll see that, and you'll see that pattern, and it's true. And you can't have rain, or you can't have rainbows without rain. Yeah. So know that. And then the second thing is that when you're in your darkest moment, the best thing that you can do is just get up and start doing things. Ask for help if you need help or support. If you don't like saying help, ask, like, go and just accomplish something small. So sometimes for me, it's pulling weeds or doing the dishes or wiping down countertops or something small, and just like accomplish something that you need to finish. And just pick something small and accomplish it, because it starts this winning snowball, gives you the endorphins and the dopamine and the serotonin. And then there's one breathing method that I was taught earlier this year that I use now all the time. And it's the 4-5-6 method. So if you ever get into that heated moment, argument with your spouse, take in a breath for 4 counts, hold it at the top for 5, and then breathe out for 6, because that, like, I got mad at my daughter one day. She came into my office and I couldn't respond to her without reacting. And I don't know what triggered it. It didn't really matter. what my past was. It just mattered that I could help in the moment and I could be the best mom that I want to be in the moment. And so I did that breathing exercise, and it allowed my nervous system to reset so that I could respond to her and actually communicate. And so sometimes when you feel like you can't communicate, it's either okay to walk away or to do that breathing exercise. So those are the last final notes that I would leave with that are super helpful.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I love that you brought in the breathing exercise, because sometimes it really is a matter of regulating our nervous system. Like, we can have all the best intentions in the world, but if our nervous system is jacked, we're going to be reactive. It's just beyond our power to control in a certain way. So having
fight
a
or
breathing
flight,
exercise,
we go all like fuzzy and blurry.
that's just what happens, and it's okay. There's no shame in that. For whatever our history is, everybody has a different nervous system that's reactive to different things. Like you said, you don't even know why you got triggered, but you were triggered, but you had this tool that you could use in the breathing exercise to reset your system so you could respond. And I think that the more we can incorporate tools like that into how we show up in business, relationship, with our family, everywhere, the better it is for everyone.
Absolutely.
Because, ultimately we are not that reactive person. Like, that's the overlay brought on by stress. Who we are underneath that is love. And so the more we can do the practices that bring us back to that truth, so we can actually respond, the better. So thank you for bringing that, because I love that, all about the practices. So thank you so much for being here today. And again, everyone, go down in the show notes, find Cierra, connect with her. She's totally amazing. We are actually in a mastermind together, and I was like, I want to talk to you. So thank you again. And remember, everyone, that a great relationship starts with you.